Liberation Day 2025 is upon us. The Trump administration has just levied retaliatory tariffs on 60 plus countries around the globe. On this week's edition of Off the Charts, what we want to look at is the countries that will be affected, the goods that you're buying and how they could become more expensive, and how this affects your portfolio. Let's go to the charts. So we want to start with the chart that a lot of you have probably already seen. It was debuted in the Rose Garden on Liberation Day, but this just shows 50 plus countries and what the tariffs they charge to the U.S. and what the reciprocal tariffs the U.S. is implementing on those countries. What we want to do is zoom in a little bit and decipher some of the data points. First off, one of the things that I think a lot of analysts are trying to figure out, a lot of people in the media, is it references tariffs charged to the U.S. from these countries. The caveat here is it includes currency manipulation and trade barriers. No one really knows where they got this calculation from or where they arrived at this percentage of tariffs, because it's really not the exact tariffs that they're charging the US. But regardless, percentages in yellow generally is half of what the other countries are charging the US. But if we kind of just quickly go down the list, we have China showing at 34%. That's not even on top of the original 20% that was already levied. And then they're talking about another additional 50%. So where they sit now is 54%, and it could move up all the way to 104%. All across the 58 European Union countries, we see 20% reciprocal tariffs. And then also what stands out is a lot of countries in Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Taiwan, South Korea, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Cambodia. A lot of the levels of tariffs levied on these countries in Southeast Asia, we think have a lot to do with China specifically. China was exporting a lot of goods to countries like Vietnam or Cambodia or Malaysia, and then skirting around US tariffs originally. So I think the US just put blanket tariffs on a lot of these countries in Southeast Asia. The last chart that we want to look at, though, is just to narrow down the data and say what countries are importing the most into the US. And there might be some surprising names on here. First off, I think a lot of people would originally have thought that China is the #1 import to the US. It's actually Mexico, but Mexico, China, and Canada account for about 1.3 trillion of the imports into the US. But we want to narrow down the goods that could go up, or the goods that a lot of these countries import. First off, it's going to be autos, auto parts, machinery. We're talking Mexico, China, Canada, Germany, Japan, South Korea. A lot of those countries are importing autos into the US. Electronics would be #2. A lot of electronics come from China and Japan and Vietnam and South Korea and Taiwan. #3 would be apparel, home furnishings, so your clothes, things you decorate your house with, your shoes. A lot of that is Southeast Asia, so Taiwan, Vietnam, China, countries like those. And then lastly, we mentioned Europe has a 20% tariff across the board. We get a lot of our pharmaceuticals from Europe, so Germany and Ireland. And lastly, maybe bad news if you do like whiskey or if you do like Guinness. Again, that's coming from Ireland. So, but we wanted to close out with saying what the messaging we're relaying to clients is this will eventually be solved. This can't go on forever. So whether it's next week, 6 months from now, next year, a lot of this is really unsustainable. And we think we will see concessions from outside countries. We're hoping that the US comes to the table and negotiates as well. But for those that are already fully invested in the market, you've already weathered from what we feel is a good portion of the storm. And if you do have money on the sidelines, we recommend dollar cost averaging in. There was a lot of information. These are unprecedented times. We will be providing updates as the situation changes, as it obviously will. So stay tuned for future episodes of Off the Charts, and we look forward to seeing you next week.